This is the code name for an operation by NATO countries in the Baltic Sea. NATO ships are to protect underwater infrastructure that has recently been sabotaged by Russian and Chinese ships. At the same time, NATO's Secretary General has called for an increase in defence spending from 2 to 3.7% of GDP. But experts say numbers alone are not enough. Above all, this is a show of force. The alliance's main objective in the Baltic Sea is to deter anyone from trying to threaten the infrastructure of NATO countries.
Ship captains must understand that potential threats to our infrastructure will have consequences, including possible boarding, impounding and arrest.
This is the response of countries around the Baltic Sea to sabotage by Russian and Chinese ships. There is now no doubt that the whole series of damaged cables on the seabed was no accident. Finnish investigators are convinced that, if the Russian ship had not been detained in December, there would have been a disaster in the Baltic Sea. According to the authorities' current understanding, there was an immediate risk that other cables and gas pipes could have been damaged, and so intervention on the ship was necessary. There were other underwater installations in the vicinity. However, experts say it will be extremely difficult to protect the sea. It is physically impossible to protect thousands of kilometers of underwater cables and gas pipelines along their entire length. The key may be to intercept or in some way escort ships heading for the Russian Federation. But my fear is that the Russians will respond in the only predictable way, which is to launch provocations the moment our ships appear. In the face of Moscow's confrontational attitude towards the West, NATO's Secretary General has just called for a review of planned arms spending.
NATO allies have certainly increased defence spending. 2/3 are now spending at least 2% of GDP on defence. And that's good, and I very much welcome their efforts. But to be honest, 2% is not nearly enough. To stay safe in the years to come, allies will need to spend considerably more than 2%.
The NATO headquarters says 3.7%. The President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, is talking about 5%. For many countries, that is an unacceptable price to pay.
5% in Deutschland würden bedeuten,
5% in Germany would mean about 40% of the federal budget, 40% of the entire federal budget. I don't know which country could afford that. So it is not a question of percentages. It is a question of whether NATO's capability goals, the ones that have been defined, should be met. It is not just a question of money, but also of efficiency and credibility. The Americans have good reason to want more defense spending from Europe. After all, for decades, they have been pumping trillions of dollars into their sphere of influence in the old continent, whose leaders have at the same time been becoming increasingly dependent on Moscow's energy. Decisions made by the governing bodies of major Polish cities are far from economic patriotism. In Poznan, it turns out money from the National Reconstruction Plan was used to buy 30-year-old used German trams. And this is the same fund that was supposed to be used to rebuild European Union member states after the pandemic. Why were such decisions made? Today, I'm taking a closer look at the situation. I make this solemn pledge here in Sopot, my hometown, that the day after the elections, the day after victory, I will go and unblock this money. The money from the National Reconstruction Plan has arrived, with considerable delay, and it is being used for investments that are questionable for Polish interests. It was supposed to amount to 137 billion zloty, and so far only 67 billion zloty has been transferred. Instead of rebuilding the Polish economy after the pandemic, the money will serve German companies. Poznan will buy 24 trams from Germany's Bonn, for which it will pay nearly 10 million zloty. The vehicles are 30 years old. For all the trolls from Law and Justice and TV Republic who read poorly, Poznan will gain 30 new trams manufactured by Modotrans Poznan, with the production plant in Biskupice in the Poznan district, Pobiedziska municipality. For this purpose, 215.7 million zloty from the National Reconstruction Plan will be spent. We check. Poznan will buy 30 new trams in addition to the 24 used ones from Germany.
W żadną stronę
In no way will buying used rolling stock, still bought abroad, jumpstart this economy in Poland. So this goes a bit against the purpose for which the National Reconstruction Plan was established in the first place. This decision, given the fact that they are used, is strange, and in the case of Poznan, this decision is already astonishing in general, because Poznan indirectly owns a very good manufacturer of trams, specifically the Modder Trans Company, which is owned by Poznan Municipal Transport Company. Why was a German company chosen instead of a Polish one? It was contrived, very rightly anyway, to find some idiots in neighbouring countries and sell them used equipment. For example, trams for so-called half-free. What do they gain? No disposal costs, rolling stock with spare parts. So if you sell spare parts, you get rid of their warranty. The astonishing decision of Poznan City Hall, which is headed by Jaskowiak of the Civic Coalition, is in line with the ruling party's broader economic thinking. We have an airport in Berlin. We have an EU summit in Brussels. We have new 30-year-old trams in Poznan so as to meet the needs and possibilities from the German Bonn, produced in the Siemens factory. All in all, logical, the local government as well as the government. Why buy new trams manufactured in Poland when you can get 30-year-old junk from Germany? Unbelievable. Dominika Kulczyk's company also received funds from the National Reconstruction Plan for the energy transition in Poland instead of Polish SOEs like Orlen and PGE. The smiling government is handing out gifts for Christmas, rises for everyone, hundreds of millions from the National Reconstruction Plan for Dominika Kulczyk's company, another gift after the concession, a financial montage for money that should go to the Treasury. These funds should be used for the strategic energy transformation of Orlen and PGE, resulting in lower energy prices. What prices will be produced by Kulczyk's company? We can guess from the prices of driving on the A2 highway. Who drives knows. There, too, there was both a concession and a multi-year contract, and higher prices as a result. Is anyone still surprised that the money from the National Reconstruction Plan magically got unblocked after the change of government? In addition to supporting foreign and even hostile Russian companies in similar decisions regarding Warsaw's public transportation, the capital's president is known for his unpatriotic economic views. I, for one, think this is gigantomania, with the fact that we will have within 2 years an airport in Berlin. Now that he is running for president of Poland, he has dramatically changed his tune. The moment the new government appeared, rational plans appeared which can actually lead to the fact that we will have a central transportation port and that its construction will begin. And suddenly there is money for a nuclear power plant. It turned out exactly as I suggested. There will also be an expansion of the airport at Okęcia. This shows how he treats the Polish interest. That is, the Polish interest can only be seen as it coincides with the German interest. The moment there is a divergence, the German interest will be put first. When using funds to rebuild the Polish economy, politicians should be guided by the interests of Polish companies. It always raises the question of how much more is needed for economic patriotism to begin to hit the consciousness at the local level among local authorities. And it is the Polish interest that should come first, both at the level of national and local government investments.
As the Israeli military operation against Hamas terrorists in the Gaza Strip continued, peace negotiations in Qatar between envoys of Tel Aviv and representatives of Palestinian militants were coming to an end.
Israel wants
There is progress. Israel is demanding the return of the hostages, and time will tell if the other side will honor the terms of the agreement. We will find out soon. The effect is an agreement whose terms are still unofficial. On the day the parties signed the agreement, 3 Israeli hostages kidnapped over a year ago will be returned to their families. At the same time, Israel will begin to withdraw its troops from the Gaza Strip. After 1 week, 4 more hostages will return home, and the safety of Palestinian civilians who fled the war will be guaranteed.
Donald Trump has called on the sides to reach a deal by the time he takes office on January 20th. Those words seem to be heeded by all of the sides, and they appear eager to reach a deal by that time. In fact, Trump's Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, hasn't even started his job officially yet. He's already on the ground and deeply involved in these talks, hoping to push that agreement across the finish line.
The sudden acceleration of negotiations is the result of pressure from Donald Trump. The president-elect has threatened that if Hamas terrorists do not return the kidnapped loved ones of Israeli families, they will regret the day they raised their hand against civilians.
If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
Hamas has no intention of testing Donald Trump's patience. The Palestinian militants have agreed to peace terms, and after more than a year, the kidnapped civilians still alive will finally regain their freedom.
Bardzo poważnie potraktowali jego słowa.
They took his words very seriously. A president who is not yet in office sent his envoy, who is also an eminent lawyer, to negotiate peace in the Middle East on behalf of a president who is not yet in office. This is unique in the world, but it is also an indication of how powerful Donald Trump feels right now.
The Senate races.
On October 7th, 2023, Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They kidnapped, raped, and murdered defenseless people, including participants in a border festival. They unleashed the hell of war that continues in the Middle East to this day. Only now has hope begun to shine through.
I haven't stood at this podium and said anything particularly optimistic about a hostage deal in quite some time, and that's because we haven't been in the position that I think we are in today.
The deal, pushed so hard by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, brings hope and relief to families who have been calling for a ceasefire and the return of hostages for over a year in vain. Relatives no longer count the weeks or days, but the hours until the ceasefire and the end of this 15-month-long tragedy.
One of the most isolated communities on Earth is now the proud owner of a public electric vehicle charge point, which it says is the most remote in the world. St. Helena, part of the British Overseas Territory of St. Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha, is a small volcanic island 1,200 miles west of Namibia in the South Atlantic Ocean, with a population of less than 5,000 people and just 4 electric cars. The local government wants that to change, with a commitment to increasing its wind and solar power.
Where we are placed just below the equator, we have about 12 hours of sunlight a day, almost all year round. And because we're a small island in the middle of the ocean, there's always sort of a wind blowing through. So we do have really ideal conditions for solar and wind energy.
The island is currently reliant on imported fuel, spending 15% of its annual budget of £34 million, approximately £5 million, on diesel for power and transport.
I think that people's attitudes on the island towards the environment are changing. It's been a long time where we've all just been really reliant on diesel and petrol. But since the government invested in wind turbines and solar panels to help contribute towards our electricity generation, it's helped to open up people's minds in terms of what is available.
The new public electric vehicle charging point is part of a trial with Norwegian charging company EC and Subaru Cars to test the feasibility of the tropical volcanic island weaning itself off fossil fuels. A Subaru Solterra was sent as part of the trial, and local car rental company owner Derek Pedley plans to increase the number of EVs on the island.
I am looking to bring electrical vehicles to the island in the first quarter of 2025. We're looking to bring in 4 in the first quarter and to trial to see if there is going to be the demand. We've looked at putting in electric points close to town and also up at the airport for passengers to be able to collect the vehicle at the airport, and then obviously having another charging point close to town.
St. Helena has committed to increasing its wind and solar power generation from 25% to 80% in the next 4 years, and even further by the end of the decade. The government offers almost 0% tax on imported electric cars, but with the average wage under £9,000, most EVs are still an expensive luxury.
I've just got a picture of you filming it.